Tell us a little bit about yourself to start off with.
So, a 27-year-old father, I would say I'm a non-traditional student. I recently, it was in the last 3 years that I decided that I was going to pursue being a physician. I thought about it when I was younger, but I was just like, nah, my background, my grades, all of the things everything that was about me, I was like, there's no way I could do it. So I just was like, no, I can't do that. But then, as I grew older, I was like, I just got rid of all the doubts that I had about myself, and I just overcame so much stuff. I was like, you know what? If I want to do this, I can do it. So I just started on the journey, and I've been pursuing this for about 3 years now.
Yeah, that's awesome. It kind of reminds me what you just said. It kind of reminds me a lot of what we just heard from Dr. Sampson Davis and his words of encouragement. I'll just remind the listeners and those watching on YouTube that his mantra was the 3 Ds: dedication, determination, and discipline. And I loved what he said. And Dalen, it really reminded me of this when you said that he said it turns impossible into I'm possible. So it sounds like you crossed that bridge also, recognizing that this was something that you wanted to do, but was also possible for you to do.
Yeah, I definitely would say that I did. I had to really do some overcoming, not only obstacles but my own thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, it makes total sense. Now tell us where you're calling from today.
I am in Central Alabama.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is that where you grew up?
Yeah, pretty much. I've been in Central Alabama my whole life.
Yeah.
Rural South.
Yeah, I understand. Well, do you anticipate that once in medical school and after med school, you'll return to Central Alabama?
If it's not Central Alabama, I would probably still want to practice in a rural area.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a heart for the people that are in the rural communities. I've grown up without access to, medical care. And as I've gotten older, I've seen like such an importance that it is to have access to good quality medical care. And I would like to, I guess part of my mission is to kind of help fill that gap in the rural areas.
Sure.
And so I definitely see myself, if not returning to Alabama, as some rural area.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. Well, we're gonna start looking at your information. I've got we've got your mapped account pulled up here, and we're gonna take a look at this and kind of see what we think. And I'm gonna ask you various questions about it, and so that'll be helpful. So you're at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and
Correct.
you why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here on the slide is your GPA graph. We see a cumulative GPA of 3.26 and science GPA 3.2. We see some ups and some downs. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here on this graph?
Okay, absolutely. So I can tell you more about the ups and downs than anything, because this constant trend is mostly attributed to the fact that I've, in these early years right here, from 2010 to really 2014, I was always working and taking care of my mom and little brother throughout those years. And so I always took classes, didn't really know what I wanted to do in this time. And so I was just kind of going about my life. But whenever I got to this point, this is when I started at University of Alabama, Birmingham. I probably made a bad decision, went back into school full time after being out for, 3 or 4 years, and took 14, 15 credit hours, and did, didn't do as what I wanted to do, but did better than I guess some could expect. And then the same year, the same time that I started school back, I found out that my wife and I were going to be having our first child.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So during this time, we were preparing for that. I had purchased a home, and during my break from school, I purchased a home. I was just living life with my wife, and one day it finally snapped, and we were like, "Hey, I want to be a physician. Let's work on doing that." So we sold our house, downsized, started living with. We moved into one of her parents' rental houses, and have been staying there since 2019. And then in 2019 is when my first son was born, and we see this dip right here in the semester, because this is probably my biggest downfall in my opinion. But during this dip, my wife and I actually went through some really big hardships in our relationship, with having a new kid, with being in school, with all of the things that come with, being a pre-med, and
right,
not having everything together, and having just having some issues. And so we separated, and I lived, I was kind of homeless during this time, during this semester. And so I sacrificed this semester, and foolishly and proudly didn't relent to, withdraw from my classes. I still continued. And so that's why I have this really big dip right here. I failed most of the classes, or barely passed with a C. But I reconciled with my wife, and we came back together, and we actually had a, much better relationship after. And I came back in 19 and 20 and retook some of the classes, did well in them, got back on the wagon, as I would say.
Yeah.
And just kind of been working to increase my GPA throughout this time.
Sure.
But it's been difficult with have a child, having to work, and then also actually here recently, in the last 9 months, found out I was having a second child.
Oh, wow.
Just born last month.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I certainly understand, and I think many of our listeners can understand, and those that are watching, that life continues. When you're in school, the same thing happens when you're in medical school. Life continues, and there are ups and downs, and it really does, I think, focus us on Dr. Davis's mantra, and I'll remind us all about that: dedication, determination, and discipline. It really does come down to those 3 Ds in a lot of ways, when you're in the midst of difficulties of life. And I think what medical schools are looking for in applicants is, when those times occur, do the wheels fall off? Does everything fall apart? Does it really, what does that do to you and your resolve? What does that do to you and your effort to make this happen? So, kudos to you for continuing the effort. And I think that says a lot about your determination, certainly.
Yeah. Well,
so let's go. Absolutely. So let's go down on the screen there, and we'll go all the way down to the bottom where we see MCAT stuff. And what we see here is the MCAT graph. And what I'd like for us to do now is go over to the left nav bar and go to the MCAT tab. And why don't you describe to us kind of what we're seeing here? We see some practice tests. The last one being just recently, I guess May 25th. So not too long ago, just a few days ago.
Yeah.
One in January and one last, I guess a couple last summer, last fall. So you've been preparing for a while on MCAT, is that right?
I wouldn't necessarily say I've been preparing. In June, I took my first test in June of last year. Um, all three of these from June to January, they're all tests that I took before I had actually finished my prerequisites. And
Okay.
um, so I didn't do any studying. I just took these tests to kind of see how my prerequisites were attributing to my MCAT score and kind of trying to get a baseline. So I took these took these three, and as you can see, got a 494, 492, and 493. So pretty well within the same score average.
Right.
And then the one I took just a few days ago actually is now, since I've finished all of my prerequisites, all of the chemistry, physics, biochemistry, biology, and I've taken psychology. And so I wanted to see what I would be with just taking those classes. And so now I'm taking this summer. I'm not taking any classes like I have been every summer, but I'm taking the entire summer and studying full time for the MCAT, as much as I can, with also working full time.
Sure. Now you're doing the studying on your own, or you're taking any kind of assistant courses or anything, or tell us about that a little bit.
Okay. Yes. So I have one of the Kaplan books. It's like the Kaplan 528. I've been going through it and reading it to kind of just reorient myself with things that I'm not as familiar with anymore, like the psychology and sociology, which I took back when I was, back in 2012 and 13.
Sure.
But aside from that, I have the AAMC online practice prep. And so I'm going to start going through those, taking, my plan is to do all of the practice questions for the sections, and then do multiple practice exams in getting ready for the MCAT. And I also have a benefit through my job where I can get free tutoring sessions for twice a week. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah. I'm going to utilize that as well in preparing for this.
Yeah, cool. Now you said you're taking it in August. Is your test date?
Correct. I'm going to take it August 7th.
August 7th. Okay, excellent. So that gives you really, basically about 10 weeks or so from here, 9 or 10 weeks to really focus on no coursework and studying the material. So that's fantastic. This does, I think, give you a pretty good baseline. The 497. After you've had all the classes, is kind of, I think that is your baseline now, and so you're building from that, and certainly encourage you to do a lot of content review, a lot of practice sample questions, practice questions, and then as you get closer, certainly by July, you're really going to want to hit the practice tests as much as possible, taking as many of those practice tests as you can, full-length practice tests, to really increase, for a variety of reasons, to increase your the stamina, both physical and mental stamina, but also studying those practice tests. Where did you get this question wrong? Why did you get it wrong? And then going back to the material and restudying those types of things that were brought up in that particular question. And then also practicing very much, getting used to the way they're asking questions, getting used to the critical thinking, reasoning skills that are so vital on the MCAT. One of the things that I think is beneficial for you at this point, from what I see in the last practice test that you took, that baseline that we're calling it, is you're pretty consistent amongst the section scores. So 124, 125, 123, 125, pretty consistent. I'm really actually impressed that the 125 on cars is your highest section, along with the psychology, sociologies section. And cars is usually an area that people struggle in, and so don't ignore cars. The critical reasoning, critical analysis, and reasoning skills section in your study regimen. But that looks great. That looks really good. So let's go back now to the dashboard. Scroll down to the activities, and we see right here that we have 3,897 logged activities in your mapped account, and graphed out for us here. So I'd like to go over to the left navigation bar again and go to Activities tab, and then have you kind of walk through this and tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here.
Okay. I'll start down here at the bottom, kind of with the first beginning. So Spirit of Luke was when I have it set up in my application as the first clinical experience, because really this was the first time I had ever been exposed to a clinical setting outside of being the patient when I was sick. So we went down to the Black Belt in Alabama, me and members of the Alpha Epsilon Delta pre-medical group, medical society.
Yeah.
And we went down, served patients in the Black Belt of Alabama, and we just set up a makeshift free clinic in a church and just served people, served them food, gave out clothing, and also they saw physicians and pharmacists, and we gave out medication during that event.
Awesome.
Scribe, that's where I currently work. I currently work as an emergency room medical scribe. I've logged, I work about 10 shifts per month, 12 hours per day. And really, I've watched Dr. Gray's videos and stuff talking about how you need clinical experience, and so many students don't have clinical experience. And I couldn't stress that enough. Really seeing that patient-physician relationship gave me a lot to reflect on in the hours after work about why I want to be a doctor.
Sure.
So, for people listening, definitely don't skip out on clinical experience.
Right.
Premed's MCAT Study Buddies is it's a little group that I made last fall during my organic chemistry 2 class. We were having, I felt really alone during that time because everything was online. We couldn't really get together and study, and couldn't talk with one another in class. So I was like, you know what? I want to start a group where we could also kind of talk together about the pre-med, MCAT, and stuff, just with my people that go to my school.
Sure.
So I started a little group me. I started a group on the Group Me app, and got some people from the school that are coming in, and I log on there and share the things that I'm using to help me with my pre-med journey and studying and preparing for the MCAT, and other people do that as well. And I've also created like a timesheet where people can sign up and sign up and try to organize themselves to get to a point where they can, hop on a video chat or meet up for lunch and study for the MCAT. So I was just trying to do something that could help other people like me.
Awesome.
The MedPed shadowing was the first time I ever shadowed a physician, and I tried to do it, and I did it in a 2-week format. So I did 40 hours in 1 week, 40 hours the next week, because I really wanted to see what it would like to be a primary care physician and go into work, almost as much as the primary care physician.
Right.
And so I shadowed.
So that must have been very valuable in terms of your perspective.
Yeah, it really was. It was very valuable in as far as being able to see because it was also the first time I had seen like the physician do something, from like just being a wall. Because in the clinical, the Spirit of Luke thing, I didn't get to see the physician-patient relationship in that.
Right.
This was the first time I saw the physician-patient relationship at all. And, I came out of it thinking I definitely could do this. And it made me want to do it even more.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Yeah.
And,
Awesome.
yeah, a Harvest for Health was a research study that I worked on through work study. And I worked on it from 2018 to 2019. We were basically doing, it was kind of like a clinical trial for at-home gardening for cancer patients over the age of 60, or cancer survivors over the age of 60, to see if gardening could help them with their quality of life, microbiota, and physical fitness. And I got to go out and see some of the patients and help with the initial baselining for them, and then just did a lot of in-house research stuff. So I got to see what the research is like, and it was beneficial in the fact that it helped me realize I don't want to do research.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's a very applicable reason to get involved in research, to see what it's like, and some people are really turned on by it, and other people, obviously like yourself, not so much.
Yeah.
Good.
As far as going on, I've got gardening as one of my activities, just because that's one of my hobbies. Ever since leaving that research study, I developed a really big love for gardening, for sure. And then
Right.
I've been doing e-shadowing just to continue shadowing and getting more experience and knowledge about different specialties through Dr. Gray's beneficial services.
Sure.
And then I worked when I was younger, about 18, 19, and 20, I served as a youth leader, and I volunteered for my church an extensive amount of hours per week for like 2 to 3 years, just doing all kinds of different stuff, playing bass, helping in the media, helping to, working with the youth, like teenagers and youth.
Good. So very involved in the community in that regard.
Yes, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Definitely something I like to. At the time, I didn't realize how much it meant to me to like to be an influence to young, like teenagers and children and people of youth. But now, as I've gotten older, I've reflected, and I've been like, I've definitely seen how, I've almost wanted to go into a pediatrician route, which I never saw myself doing when I was younger.
Right.
Because I see so much. I have such a heart for children and teenagers now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool. And it looks like you've done some as a teaching assistant or learn there at the school.
Yes, absolutely. I took it was a class that was offered as the biology learning assistant. And it was basically just tutoring small groups of about 3 or 4 students in their biology courses, and just helping them out, making PowerPoints, doing Kahoot games with them, and just trying to help them improve their grade and learn the material.
Awesome.
For that. Yeah. And I'm also going to do some SI in the fall, but I'm not logging that yet.
Yeah. Good. All right. Have you got some med schools included in your mapped account yet?
I do. I've got every med school that I'm actually applying to.
Okay. Why don't you show us that on the tab down to med schools, and So obviously, the med schools in Alabama, you're going to apply to.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's good, both DO and MD.
Yes.
Okay. And then we got some other schools, California, Colorado, Florida. So Florida not too far from Alabama.
No.
Georgia pretty close as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, keep going. All together, how many schools are we talking about that you're thinking?
It's 24 medical schools.
Okay, both MD and DO combined.
Yes, it's 20 MD and 4 DO.
Okay, good. All right, good. Yeah, good. It looks like you're kind of spreading them around the country as well. Any particular reasons for some of your choices, or?
Yeah, I would say I was pretty analytical in how I in the schools I chose.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things I looked at, well, I've got the MSAR, the medical school application requirements, and so I went on to that. And one of the first things I looked at, because I know what my weakness is, and it's my GPA.
Mm-hmm.
I went on and kind of looked at the GPA acceptance rates and kind of gauged which schools I should apply to based on that.
Sure.
Really based on, I determined whether I should consider them based on that. And then I would go to like their mission statement and the type of area that they're in, and other aspects, and more like of the characteristic of the school. And if I like the mission statement, the characteristics of the school, I added it to the list.
Gotcha. Yeah, sounds like a reasonable way to go about it. And I'm encouraged that you are applying both MD and DO. I think that's a good way to go about it. Now, have you experienced some DOs in your work there in the emergency room as a scribe?
Yeah, the physician I work with primarily, most of the time, is a DO. So I've gotten to see, I have MDs and DOs there, but the one that I've worked with the most is a DO. And I like his approach to things, but, I really don't see much of a difference between MD, an MD in the field and a DO in the field.
Right.
At where I work, at least. Maybe there are some who hold strict to the osteopathic philosophy, but I kind of feel like, any good physician is going to give a holistic approach to their patient.
Yeah, I agree. And so let's go back to your dashboard and let's talk a little bit about just about kind of what I'm seeing, and we'll come to some conclusions here. What I see here, Dalen, just in terms of the picture I see right now, you've got lots of good clinical experience, some shadowing, both with kind of a variety of doctors, particularly in primary care, and then also in pediatrics, I guess, was the other one. You said med and peds.
Yeah, he was an internal medicine and pediatrics, so he did both. So I got to see both, and then emergency medicine through scribes.
Right, that's right. So good experiences. You obviously know what you're getting into. You know what it's all about. You know what the physician does on a daily basis, both through the shadowing as well as through your work as scribing in the ER. And so that's encouraging to me. The difficulty, obviously, and you will be aware of this, is that, what we have here is a situation where you're working full time. And so what medical schools don't know is if you didn't have to work, if you weren't working, what would your academic picture look like? This is an unknown because we don't, we haven't really experienced that. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what we know is that you're working full time, you're going to school full time, and your GPA is around a 3.2. And so the question then for the medical schools to really understand is, when Dalen doesn't have to work, when he's totally focused on school, one would assume that you're going to be a much better student, that you're going to have more time to devote to the academic endeavor, and that will be that will be important to your success in medical school, obviously, and clearly you won't the vast majority of students do not work during medical school, and those that do work just tiny bits, not much at all, maybe in the first couple of years. So the big question mark is for medical schools is, what is Dalen going to look like when he's not working anymore? And so we can presume that the trend would be a different trend if you weren't working. Because of the working full time, having a family, a lot of things going on in your life that require your attention, and so balancing all that out, you've been able to do, I think a laudable job in the classroom. A lot of students that are in a same kind of situation like you do not do as well at all. And so kudos to you for what you've done, balancing out, juggling all that you've had to juggle. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I do think that the MCAT's going to be pretty crucial for you to help understand a little bit about what you've gained from the classes that you've taken, and also what you're able to use in terms of those classes. What I'd like for us to do is really, come to some conclusions about the MCAT. You're going to spend the next, 10 weeks or so studying, focusing outside of work. You're going to focus on the MCAT, as we discussed earlier, and I think that's going to be a pretty important aspect of your picture, is to do well on the MCAT. Now, what does that mean, do well on the MCAT? Obviously, everybody goes into the MCAT wanting to get is the best that they can.
Yeah.
And so what you're going to see is hopefully is, as you begin taking practice tests after having studied, that you'll see that score starting to trend up. So you got a 497 now as your baseline, and you want to trend up on that. And the key to that is going to be studying the tests that you've taken and scored. It's going to be on those practice tests, not just taking the practice test, seeing the score and moving on, but taking this practice test and studying your results. Very crucial to study those results to see, where am I making mistakes, what do I need to review, and how do I need to move forward on that. So very important to not overlook the necessity to study the test that you've taken, the practice test that you've taken.
Yeah.
What I'd like to say now is that what I see here, I usually in the Am I Ready episodes that we've taped previously, I always like to do it like a signal light on the road. Is it a red light? Is it a yellow light? Or is it a green light?
Yeah.
And I think what I would say for you right now is, I would say it's a yellow light. We don't know the results of the MCAT. What I would suggest, and like I said, everything's not about the MCAT. Everything's not about the numbers, but they are important, and we have to recognize that that's true. I think you have some great clinical experience. You obviously have a heart for wanting to go into medicine, and a heart for people, and that's important, and that will be recognized in the process. What I would say is that the MCAT's going to be another important part of that process. And now we recognize that you're taking it August the 7th, You're not going to get that score back until early September. So my recommendation is, because your intention is to apply this year, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so my recommendation is to go ahead and get AMCAS, ACOMAS, get those 2 applications finished up sometime in the next, month or so, get it submitted and get the 2 submitted, so that all they're waiting for at the medical school level is your MCAT scores. And then you're going to see, but you're going to see how things play out. What I typically suggest to students in situations like yours, where there's an unknown, like the MCAT score, is I want you to, put on your pessimistic hat. You're going to hope for the best, and you're going to plan for the worst.
Yeah.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst. And so obviously the best is you get into medical school so you don't have to worry about anything.
Yes.
We're going to hope for that. The worst is it doesn't go well, and you have to reapply. So what I want you to think about is, what are you going to be doing over the course of this year to better your application for the next cycle, if that became necessary?
Yeah.
And what I would suggest is, continuing to take classes. I would suggest upper level biological science, neuroscience, anything like that will help to bolster your efforts in getting into medical school. What I want to see with that is maybe not as many courses, since you're ostensibly going to still work full time, is to take a limited number, maybe 2 a semester, and just focus in on those classes and do really well in those classes. Well, meaning A's in those classes. So that next cycle, again, if that became necessary, we're going to hope that it doesn't. But if it became necessary to reapply next cycle, that you would have another 4 courses under your belt that are showing I can do this at a very high level. Okay. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Yeah. And like I said, it may not in the long run, it may not be necessary to do that. But I always think we err on the side of being careful and being a little bit pessimistic, realistic, perhaps you might call it, and say, if I don't get in this cycle, I want to be better next cycle. And you can't wait until next cycle to be better. You have to be better the year intervening. So I think that is kind of my feeling about where things stand with you, Dalen. You're obviously a hard worker. You do a lot of effort with your job. You do a lot of effort with your family, and you do a lot of effort in the classroom. And that makes it tough. It makes it tough to really, focus yourself and to do all that juggling and everything. So again, kudos to you for all that you do, and keep up the hard work, keep up the dedication, determination, and discipline that Dr. Davis talked about. And I would say that eventually, whether it's this year or next year or whatever, you're going to be able to turn impossible into I'm possible. I love that. If you can't tell, I really love that. But I think, good luck to you, Dalen, and keep in touch with us if you would. Let us know how things are going, and we'll be anxious to hear and eventually celebrate with you.
Awesome. I would love to keep in touch.
Yeah, that would be
great. Very much.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. Well, again, Dalen, thank you for joining us on Am I Ready? It's been a delight to meet you, and good luck to you, and hope everything goes well this year. And we'll certainly enjoy getting to hear from you sometime soon.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.